to the first of 3 short modules focusing on integrating research into practice. We refer to these modules as research nuggets. Each nugget is about 20 minutes in length, and you can view them anytime, anywhere. Before we get started with this first research nugget, we'd like to review how research fits into the bigger picture of the Oregon Leadership Academy. After the first workshop using data for student success, you analyzed and prioritized your program improvement needs. Isolating our problem areas is one thing. Knowing what to do to fix the problems can be rather complicated. We gave you the red flags chart, but now we are going to dig deeper. The remainder of the Oregon Leadership Academy will be spent on identifying research-based strategies and best practices, including career-infused programming and putting in place a strong management team to collectively guide efforts. The virtual Research Nuggets and follow-up webinar scheduled for February and March will give directors and data professionals a solid foundation. If you are a local director, you will also explore additional research-based strategies in the face-to-face workshop in July entitled Creating a Career-Infused Program. We will take a close look at strategies for implementing integrated education and training, as well as career-infused programs for all levels of students. In September, the directors and data professionals will meet again to delve into building strong management teams, regardless of the size of your staff, to guide program improvement efforts. This workshop will be followed by a webinar in October of 2018 to discuss the process for conducting your culminating program improvement pilot project. You will conclude the Leadership Academy with the actual implementation of your pilot project between October 2018 and January 2019. Now that you hopefully have a better idea of the role that research plays in program improvement, let's take a look at how the virtual research workshop is designed. There are 3 online research nuggets you should watch before March 18th. Each nugget is only about 20 minutes long. This first nugget will give you an overview of accessing, understanding, and judging research. The second nugget will focus on 4 research studies related to student persistence and strategies for keeping students more engaged. The third nugget will focus on 4 studies related to teaching and learning research. You have short research briefs for each study in the packets emailed to you. You will find it helpful to review each of the briefs before or after you watch the nuggets. It should take you no more than 1 hour to read the 8 briefs. Then, select one of the research studies that you like the most and review the full report. Each brief includes a URL to the full report. Just be sure you have completed the research nuggets and your readings by March 19th, the day of the first webinar, in which we will discuss your reflections on what you learned and a plan to engage your staff in using the same process. A second webinar will be held on March 21st in case you are unable to participate on March 19th. You will then engage a group of your staff members in accessing, understanding, and judging research and submit your research interim activity by April 24th. As we begin examining research, it's important to remember that research is not necessarily the truth. Dr. Tom Green, an MIT psychologist, reminds us that research tells us what is reasonable to believe. Research is carried out under certain conditions with certain subjects. Your job is to determine if you think it applies to your program or which parts of your program. So as we look at research findings, they only tell you what is reasonable to believe. It is up to you to take it from there. When research is reasonable to believe, it obviously adds a lot of value to our program improvement work. The findings may confirm what you are already doing, and that is a good thing. Or it may add that little part that will improve what you are already doing. Research findings may also suggest a solution to a nagging problem you have had, or the findings may be something entirely new that you had not thought about before. In each of these ways, the findings can improve your services. Our goal for today is to review the process for finding or accessing relevant research findings, understanding what the findings mean, and judging if the findings can contribute to your program. There is a wealth of information in adult education and related research, so why don't we use more of it? Do you access and integrate research as much as you'd like? If not, why not? On a piece of paper, jot down the reasons why you don't use research more often. After 30 seconds, the tutorial will automatically advance to the next screen. Let's see how your responses compared with your colleagues around the country. We polled 1,000 of your colleagues and asked them why they don't use research more often. The number 5 reason for not using research was, can't figure out how to integrate it with what I'm doing now. The number 4 reason was, don't know how to determine if it's good for my program. The number 3 reason was, don't know how to find good research. The number 2 reason for not using research more often was, can't understand it when I find it. And the number 1 reason for not using research more often across the country was, don't have the time, money, or staff to invest. Do any of these responses match yours? You actually may be more research-based than you think. For instance, do instructors use real-life materials to teach reading, math, and English? Then you are research-based, based on Victoria Purcell Gates' research on taking literacy skills home and the Adult Performance Level Study by Norval Northcutt. In Kane and Kane's brain-based research, the study found that teachers should use a variety of real-life activities to create meaningful learning. Are instructors trained to accommodate learning disabilities? Then you are research-based, based on Laura Wiesel's seminal LD research in London, Ohio. Learning to Achieve is a good example of integrating research into practice. It includes an integrated set of research-based resources and professional development materials to build teacher effectiveness in providing instruction for adults with learning disabilities. Do instructors involve learners in planning and evaluating their own learning? If so, you are research-based, based on Hannah Figuerette's study on the advantages of participatory learning. And finally, do instructors build social networks in class by using group activities? If they do, you are research-based, based on Bob Keegan's work on cohorts at Harvard University, Hannah Figuerette's work on the impact of social networking, and John Cummings' research on adult persistence. So, you may already be more research-based than you think. Part of looking at research is to confirm what you already do. It is said we stand on the shoulders of those who come before us. Thus, your predecessor may have instituted strategies based on research. Or it may be that tuition told you this was good practice, and the research confirms that too. All that said, it doesn't take an Einstein to be research-based, but it does take a structured process. The process has 4 tasks finding or accessing the research, understanding what it says, and once you understand it, deciding if it will improve your program services. That's the judging part. And once you have decided it will help, pilot testing it and integrating it into your program. We will address the last step, integration, at the end of the Leadership Academy process. Today, we will briefly explore the first 3 steps. So let's get started. Let's take a quick look at the types of research. The U.S. Department of Education is promoting the use of gold standard research. They define gold standard as experimental research with random assignments to comparable groups. Let's face it, adult programs do not have compulsory attendance. Often each student has his or her own learning plan. They are not learning, nor are we teaching the same topics in the same context. They come into class with a wide variety of backgrounds and skill sets, and on and on. It is difficult, if not impossible, to randomly assign adult students to truly comparable groups. Most adult education research is correlational research. The groups are not equal, but some statistics can be used to try to control the variables. We can often use larger samples that help offset the variability. All that said, being able to generalize outcomes is more difficult. Therefore, it is your charge to help your staff look at findings and decide what is reasonable to believe. You probably have also heard the term professional wisdom. This is judgment acquired through experience, often a result of numerous colleagues with the same opinion or view. Professional wisdom allows for adaptation of research to local circumstances and allows us to operate intelligently in the absence of research or when research is incomplete. So if we are to operate evidence-based education programs, we will typically see a combination of scientifically based research and professional wisdom. It is important to note, however, that professional wisdom can have its limits. You need to make sure that the recommendations have been pilot tested rigorously, that measurable data have been maintained on the findings, and that the populations and contexts tested are similar to yours. Now that we have defined the differences among gold standard research, evidence-based research, and professional wisdom, let's talk about some of the sources to access adult education and literacy research. Obviously, with Google, Siri, Alexa, and others, information is at our fingertips. All we have to do is ask or search. You will find, however, that some sites are better than others. Let's take a look at some of the good ones. Your packet also includes the names and URLs for each of these sites. One of the best resources for English language acquisition is the Center for Applied Linguistics. Their adult section is called CALA, the Center for Adult English Language Acquisition. TESOL, Teachers of English for Speakers of Other Languages, is another excellent resource. Click on Advance the Field and then click on Research. Here, they have their latest research and access to the latest research documents. The National College Transition Network is a good source for research and best practices related to career pathways and college transition. Click either on Promising Practices or Resources. One of the larger clearinghouses for adult education research, curricula, and other resources is Literacy Information and Communication Systems, or LINCS. This URL will take you directly to the link section on research. One of the best resources that the field ever had for adult education research was the National Center for the Study of Adult Learning and Literacy, or NCSAL. Unfortunately, the research dissemination efforts of NCSAL ended in 2007 with the end of the federal funding. However, World Education, NCSAL's dissemination partner, continues to host their website so that the valuable resources developed during this time are still accessible. Through its research, NCSAL addressed questions that concern educators, policymakers, and scholars. Such questions included, why do some adult learners persist in their studies but others do not? What constitutes effective teaching and learning? What kinds of professional development activities are best for teachers? One of Niksall's most significant contributions, however, was the Administrator's Sourcebook. You will find the resources in this document still timely today. The research is organized around 5 topic areas: teaching and learning, student persistence, professional development, outcomes, and advocacy. Another great resource for rigorous independent education research is the Institute of Education Sciences. The Institute includes 4 different research bodies. The National Center for Education Research includes a number of research articles related to adult education. The National Center for Education Evaluation and Regional Assistance includes applied research and evaluation studies, including information on the national study of the implementation of adult education under the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, which is now underway. The research from the Center for the Analysis of Post-Secondary Readiness builds on prior studies of developmental education and college readiness programs conducted through the National Center for Post-Secondary Research. While the focus is on developmental education, the findings could certainly have implications for adult education instruction as well. The Community College Research Center produces working papers, research reports, practitioner packets, and other resources aimed at promoting student success at community colleges. Of particular interest are the studies that CCRC has done to identify factors that contribute to high attrition rates among developmental and adult basic skills students, and to evaluate programs and policies aimed at increasing college success for these students. Most of the research conducted on Washington State's iBest model was done by CCRC. And finally, another great source for accessing research is ERIC, the Education Resources Information Center. This website includes access to more than 1.2 million journal articles and other education-related materials. Now that you have some ideas on where to find research, let's look at some questions you should ask about the research you read. By seeking answers to these questions, you will gain a better understanding of the research itself. For example, you might want to ask, what was the question or problem the research was meant to address? Who and how many did they study? Do the population and setting resemble those familiar to you? What data did they gather? What did they find? What did they conclude? Do the research findings include implications for practice? If so, what are they? Think about how you would engage your staff in understanding the potential research findings by asking these questions. After you understand the research, you are ready to judge the relevance or suitability of its findings to your particular program. Here are some questions to consider when judging research findings. Do the findings jive with your experience? Are the findings valid for the population of teachers and students in your program? Do the findings and practices match what you are already doing in your program? If not, what would have to change? Is the potential impact important enough to investigate further? How will you prioritize what research is most important? And what would it cost for materials, training, etc. to integrate? And do you have the money? How would you engage program staff in judging whether the potential research findings hold promise for improving your services? So there you have it, the first 3 important steps in integrating research into practice: accessing, understanding, and judging. During the 2 remaining nuggets, we will examine several research studies so you can see firsthand how these 3 steps are used to select research findings that could make a real impact on your program. If student retention is an ongoing challenge for your program, you will be interested in the second nugget that focuses on John Cummings' Adult Learner Persistence Study and related research studies dealing with student persistence, motivation, and student engagement. The third nugget will include research on teaching and learning with a focus on college and career readiness. This concludes the first research nugget. To confirm your completion of the first nugget, there are a few questions you need to answer. Please go to this URL and submit your responses. Best of luck!